here's the thing. I don't think that we should spend our time prioritizing how to be as happy as possible. However you choose to define happiness or being happy, I feel like that prioritization ultimately only leads us down dead ends and can lead us down paths that might look attractive, and we might get infatuated by the idea of having a material good or having a particular relationship or friendship or opportunity in a professional context. But if we are to take that as our highest good, our highest value, then I think we leave a lot on the table for what we could accomplish and the kinds of people that we could be. Because I found a lot of the time when we are going down this path of trying to be our best and contribute as much as we can and live out the lives that we deem to be of most value, that it can tend to mean that there are moments that might not be particularly happy or pleasurable. And in that way, if we were to take the highest value of being happy, of experiencing pleasure, indulging in that more hedonistic approach, then that would mean that would come at odds at the activities that require us to be a little bit more uncomfortable and potentially be a little bit more resistant to the things that we're doing, because they're going to be difficult. They're going to be hard things that our monkey brains might not want to do. And this has been a discussion that's been going on for millennia, for timescales that are even difficult to properly conceptualize. And one example, one answer to this problem, a solution that I've found that has been the most useful for me and the things that I do and makes the most sense. Some of you may have heard of it. It's this idea of eudaimonia. Now, instead of the typical Western idea or the ideal of achieving happiness, from my understanding, achieving eudaimonia, if you were to directly translate it, it would be to be in a state of good spirit. And the way that I think about that is that it's not necessarily about always experiencing positive emotions or pleasurable situations. But if we can find ourselves enacting as many activities that further nurture our character and allow us to be the kinds of people that we can be proud of, that we can respect ourselves and respect our decisions, then that will mean that in these trying times, in these moments where things seem very difficult and as though we might not be able to come out on top or figure things out or make things work, then even if it doesn't work out, as long as we are able to maintain that good spirit, then I feel like we've still won. We've still been able to overcome a circumstance, even if it might not objectively seem like it has been a positive one. If we are able to retain that sense of internal freedom, then almost no matter what happens to us, we can take it as a valuable experience regardless. This isn't to say that the things that happen to us are necessarily our fault, but I do also feel that regardless of what happens to us, we have a responsibility to ourselves to try to live the best lives that we can, to being able to have the best experience of whatever ends up happening in our lives. There will be things that we can enact. There are things that we could not ever have controlled. But regardless, if we were to take the perspective of being a victim to our circumstances, what's the best alternative there? Would it be better to do our best to re-empower ourselves and to get to a state of belief that even though something bad might have happened to us, or even though a particular situation has been especially difficult or overwhelming, that we're able to surpass that, even if it means narrative bending or flipping the script on whatever has happened to us or the initial ideas of whatever has happened to us, to then take an apparent negative situation and turn it into a positive one. Again, not to say that that process is easy by any means, but what's the alternative? The alternative would just be to sit in this state of victimhood and to disempower ourselves from the reality that we find ourselves faced with. I'm reminded of a story I was told when I was younger, and it's with regards to a father and his two sons. Now, this father unfortunately was not the model of excellence. He had quite a few of his own problems, and so then therefore ended up treating his sons quite badly. And in the case of this example, let's just say both sons had a very similar objective experience of their father, just for the sake of argument. And then they follow these two kids to find how they grew up, how they developed. And you see one kid is doing it really tough. He's really down on his luck and things don't seem to really be working out for him. He can't hold down a steady job. He can't really have any good relationships. And when asked why he thinks this is, he said, well, with a father like mine, how could I be anything else? Now, cut to the other brother, and we can see that he's very successful. He's doing a lot with his life. He's having really fulfilling relationships, and he is now a dad, and he's doing the best that he can to raise his children in the ways that he wasn't able to be raised. And when he was asked what has contributed most to that, he would say, well, with a father like mine, how could I be anything else? The moral of the story here is that regardless of what the stimulus is, as long as we can make our absolute most of whatever it is we have in our lives, then that'll mean that we'll have the best experience we possibly can. Whether it is incredible opportunities or whether it's very unfortunate situations. And I think this is yet another example of how we can use the things that happen to us as fuel to either progress or regress. Viktor Frankl, the German psychiatrist, who ended up being a war prisoner in Auschwitz in World War II, came up with a very simple idea amongst his other work that I think is very pertinent here. What it was is that between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space, we have control over how we choose to respond to a situation. Now, this is coming from a man who experienced arguably one of the worst situations in recorded history. And for me, when I hear that story, I receive great inspiration and great motivation that I haven't had to endure anything near to that. And for me, that helps me to keep pushing towards the things that I'm wanting to do, because comparatively, I have nothing to worry about, at least with respect to something of that magnitude. Not to dismiss or disregard anyone's particular experience with anything they've faced, but I would say again, what's the alternative? I bring up all of these examples and I talk about all of this potential hardship and problems and troubles and pain because in all reality, life is never going to be 100% happy. Happiness is a fleeting emotion. It is something that we can have moments where we're lucky enough to feel that we can be grateful for having experienced, but if we were to set that as our highest value, then it's not going to be achieved the majority of the time. So in my mind, a much more functional strategy for achieving a state of wellness and well-being and tranquility and calmness and peace is one that is based around this idea of retaining a good spirit, whether it is from a stoic foundation or whether it is just from a idea of wanting to be as comfortable in your own being as you can be through engaging in activities that are themselves uncomfortable and that are, by any stretch of the imagination, difficult, then that will be a much firmer footing to live a life that we can be proud of, and to live a life that we can be rest assured in the knowledge that is one that has been well lived, one that we will have as least regrets as we possibly could have. And to clarify, because I know that the water can get a little bit murky sometimes, I'm not making this video in order to try to shame or persecute or attack any particular people or their decisions. This is simply my attempt to present something that I've found to be very useful for me and has helped to change my life for the better. And so, as a result, I'm also hoping that with sharing this message and sharing this idea, that then will also go to help others that hear it and help others that are open to the idea of considering something like this, to take the information that I'm saying and do what they will with it. Whether it completely changes their mind on a perspective they've had, whether it integrates into one slight component of an idea of something they've had, whether it does nothing at all, I am only hoping that with sharing this message, that because it's worked for me, it may hopefully help some of you as well. But that's all I have for you for today. If you have any further questions or comments or suggestions, then obviously feel free to put them down in the comments below. I'd be really interested and curious to hear your thoughts and hear what you have to say about this kind of topic. And if you're wanting a little bit more of a dynamic interaction, a little bit more of a discussion and conversation, then probably the best place for that would be in our Discord server, which thankfully now has, as I've said in the last few videos, slowly started to gain a little bit more traction. And to be able to see something that started off so small to then now be starting to flourish has been really, really good to see. And I'm very grateful for all the people that are in there, because it seems like a really good group of people that are just trying to help each other out as best we can. So if you're wanting that, then feel free to join there. I'll have the link in the description. And if you're wanting to follow along with my more kind of day-to-day movements and things that I'm doing, then I'll also link my Instagram in there as well. But as always, thanks for watching, thanks for being here, and do more than you think you can.